Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
Hello, Apps here from Dimp Digital and welcome to the Fantasy Gaming League Draft Show. I'm here just to do a quick primer and refresher of the rules before we get into the draft, which is going to be between Mr. Paper and Logan. Here's a quick rundown of the rules. The aim is to create a roster of 10 games that will score well on Open Critic. Whoever has the highest accumulative score will be crowned the winner. No duplicated games are permitted on the competing rosters. Transfers are permitted during the agreed windows for the calendar months of March, June and September. Transfers can only be made of unscored games and there is a 5-point penalty to do so. There are no limits to the amount of transfers that can be made. Any game transferred out by a competitor or a captain will enter the free transfer market, where another competitor or captain may transfer that game in without any penalty points. The Logan rule is in effect, meaning the season has a predetermined end date and time. Scores will be tallied up at this point to determine the final standings. The Fantasy Gaming League Grand Prix is made up of 6 competitors. Draft position is determined by the previous year's Grand Prix finishing position. The demoted captain from the previous year's championship match will take number 6 draft position by default. Competitors may forfeit their draft position if they miss the submission deadline. Those who meet the deadline will be promoted where possible. If more than one competitor misses the deadline, the remaining draft positions will be determined in the order the remaining submissions are made. The winner will be promoted to the championship match to contest for the Fantasy Gaming League Championship. All transfers that are made in the Grand Prix are at the competitor's discretion and do not impact the championship rosters. The Fantasy Gaming League Championship. The championship is contested by the reigning FGL champion and the previous year's Grand Prix winner. The captains will need to build a team of 3 Grand Prix competitors and 10 games. 6 of the 10 games will be made up of the first available games that are on the Grand Prix competitors' rosters. The captains will have an opportunity to select 4 of the 10 games. All transfers are made at the captain's discretion and do not impact the Grand Prix rosters. That's enough from me. Let's get straight into the draft. It's Logan versus Paper, the showdown you've all been waiting for. The Fantasy Gaming League draft of 2024. Here we are then, the Fantasy Gaming League draft for 2024. I'm joined by the 2 competitors who are going to be taking on this challenge for the overall championship. I've got the belt here on my shoulder, which is actually should be in possession of Logan, as he's now the reigning and defending Fantasy Gaming League champion. Logan, I'll bring you in now. Still the curse exists. No one has managed to defend this crown. They win it, they lose it. That's what the schedule's always been. How are you going to pull this out of your arse and become the first person to be a double champion, essentially, back to back?
It would be nice to come straight out of the bins where I've been languishing for so long to then not only win the Grand Prix, win the FGL, and retain it 3 years, duff, and then retire. That is the ultimate dream.
There is no retirements in this game, unfortunately. I've allowed retirements in the quiz, but anything else, absolutely not. But we'll see how it goes.
I'll just do a Destiny Dave and just literally like block everything.
That's the weak-minded, isn't it? We know about all that, so we need to go through that again. Anyway, we've got Paper here, the Grand Prix champion. In fact, the first person to win the Grand Prix twice. Probably didn't expect to be sitting here at some points last year when Adkins was just banging in 80s and 90s and all that sort of shit, but he fucking blew it.
Let's be honest, he shouldn't be here.
I'll let him decide whether he thinks he should be here. But
I will one day get my flowers. When I retire, people will turn around and say I was the OG, I was the GOAT of the Dimp Grand Prix, I was the GOAT of all of these. But I will never get those flowers while I'm still active. So maybe I'll retire after this year once I've done the double. And
No one's retiring. Forget about that. There's no retiring going on. It's not happening just yet. I'll retire when I'm ready. Then you can all be liquidated. That's the way it's going to happen. Anyway, we're here to do the draft. So essentially, these guys are going to pick, overall, they're going to pick 4 games of their own, and they're going to pick 3 team members to go on their team. And the games that have been acquired during the Grand Prix draft, which has already been done, will appear in their squads. I'm going to put this belt down because it's not offering anything. I'll need to do the toin cost, which is customary. Well, I thought I might as well show it off, because I very rarely have possession of it for more than a day. It's normally just picked up and sent off. But we've got to do the coin toss. Now, the coin toss is the decider on who gets to pick the first game or the first team member picks. This is always a controversial decision to be made. Paper, as challenger... No, sorry, champ, Logan, you get to choose the coin type. We've got a 5p or a £1 coin. So that's your little decision. Then Paper will choose heads or tails, and then the result of that will go to the next stage. But as champion, what do you want to choose? You've got a £1 coin or you've got 5p?
I always like a £1 coin.
Heavier. Makes it harder.
Underrated as a coin.
Well, this is an old one. It's got. When did this got to be recalled, Paper? It's got Lizzie's head on it still.
Nah, they're allowed to stay in circulation until forever.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I'll get rid of it then. Good. The OG coin will continue. So, Paper, do you want heads or tails? Bearing in mind, if you win this, you get to decide whether you want to choose the first game or the first team member pick, lose it, and that'll be yielded to Logan to choose.
I will have tails. Never fails.
I do say tails never fails. Now, I do often drop this. Dropped it, so that's going to have to be done again. There we go. Right. It is heads. Tails has failed for the first time in about 3 years.
Bloody hell.
That's a disaster. So, Logan, you get to decide at this stage whether you want to choose the very first video game and secure whatever game you've got in your head for your list, or you can give that off to Paper, allow him to choose the first game, and then when we get into the team member picks, you'll be choosing that. So
Game. Always game.
He never hesitates on that one. He's chosen the game there, so you'll be going on the right or the left-hand side for this particular spreadsheet that I'm putting together. Let's not dally around then. Number 1 pick. This is the big one, because if you get this wrong, you'll be laughed at. So, first game pick for you, Mr. Logan.
Can I just say I've chivied this around multiple times, and I'm taking... I don't know if it's a gamble. It feels like a gamble for some reason, but it shouldn't be. But it's The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered.
Interesting. Due out very soon, January 19th, will be one of the first games scored. So the likelihood of a delay costing you and not getting you any points is a low one. But seems like a solid pick. Paper, is that anywhere on your list? I'm not going to ask what your first pick would have been necessarily, because you might have it still, but was that there?
That was my first pick, so
okay.
I would have gone game as well first. So I think it's a given 90 score, given The Last of Us 1, Last of Us 1 Remastered, and Last of Us 2 have all got 90s on OpenCritic.
Unless they stick out that PC version day one, and then it'll fucking get crapped on. I don't think they will, though.
Are you not concerned, just slightly, Logan, that The Last of Us...
Yes.
I know The Last of Us Part 1 got roundly crapped on. Not always because of the PC version, that didn't help later on, but just because people are like, we don't want it, we never wanted it, why are you doing this? The difference here is they're not asking for 70 UK pounds, it's a tenner upgrade, so I think people will be a bit more docile about this ridiculous mindset they've got.
Well, I checked yesterday, and that remaster I think got a 94. So,
well, the original remaster did, yeah, you're right, but the latest one sitting there on 82, that doesn't seem like draft 1 pick quality to me.
No, it's basically because I was like, well, we'll just do it. There's very little out there that feels like, and to be honest, there was another one which is probably not second in Paper's list as well, ironically. But I was like, this feels more like something that's going to high 80s, 90s ideal if we can get it. But as you say, people might be sick of it and just go, why are they chucking this out?
Yeah.
But for a £10 upgrade, you feel like you're in safer hands.
Yeah, I do think it'll fare better than that part one, unless they blow it.
Maybe wanted to pay that money for it.
Well, I certainly didn't. One of my favourite games ever, and I went, well, no. Of course, no. We'll wait for
it's
that.
Still good, but you're not getting the plus 90s for asking me for full price.
No, I will say this at the top. I've had a look through, and this is going to be a real trench war this year. There really isn't the quantity and quality lurking of what last year had. So I feel sorry for the pair of you. I feel sorry for those Grand Prix scrubs because there's 60 odd games overall that's going to come into that, and
I genuinely mean it when I say you probably could have ordered any of my games. I said the top 10, but really when I look through it, when I look what I've got,
it's top 3 and the rest 2.
Yeah, really. I'd be surprised if me and James don't have a similar top 3.
I struggled with a top 20 list this year, and I usually get up to about 35, 40 when I send it over when I'm in the Grand Prix. So those guys are going to really struggle.
Yeah, it's not going to be good for them. Anyway, Paper, you get to have what's deemed as the number 2 pick, but the number 1 for your particular team. What are you going to go for?
So I'm hoping this is one that people have been sleeping on, but I think it's going to score relatively well. Microsoft Flight Simulator 24.
Interesting.
Ooh. So that was a 90-plus game a couple of years ago, and they've done some really good upgrades. You've got actual farming and space and all this type of stuff on there, with planes and all that type of stuff. So I'm hoping that they've done enough to people go, wow, this is the next level of Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Yeah.
So yeah, it feels like a 90-ish game.
That could be James's new. Well, my equivalent of Football Manager. Stick it in there.
Chuck it in
guaranteed.
There. There's a couple of things with that. One, that it's not got a release date yet, but they slapped 2024 on it, so they've kind of committed to that by hook or by crook. And you're right, Paper. Looking at some of the improvements they can make, one of my pet peeves of the original or Microsoft Flight Simulator back in the day was that it was just a bit boring. It was fun to fly around for a little bit, but there was nothing to do, and they started to add DLC to that. But looking at the trailer they've given, there's little careers that you can do. There's aviation. There's a lot in there. I think that's actually a very shrewd pick. So, Logan, was that anywhere lurking on your list?
No,
didn't even have it on there. So that's a good.
I've never looked at it, so
no,
stay away. But it is a good yearly. It is yearly, isn't it?
Yearly. I don't think it came out last year. No, so I think it's a couple of years old now.
Yeah, it's sort of it seems like they're doing every 3. Well, the fact they slapped a year on it, maybe they're going to change tact, but the last one didn't come out for a little while, so who knows what they'll do. It could be another Football Manager and an EA Sports FC banker for people, but it's a big old game to be chucking out every year. Although the advent of Game Pass, maybe you don't need to, because it will be lurking on there as it's published by Xbox. So, Paper, we stick with you because now you're kind of in control of this next phase. We've got The Last of Us Part 2 remastered for Logan, and you've got Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now it's in the hands of the gods, really, because although you have a level of agency over this, you've got no idea what these guys are going to give you. So I'll run through the draft order so that you guys have it just one more time. Biff was number 1, Adcock was number 2, Salmon was number 3, Adkins was number 4, Hall number 5, Parky number 6, and only one person missed the deadline. It was Parky, and it didn't matter because he was already 6th anyway, so there was no places to be gained or lost for that failure there. So that's your choice. Games are taken from their Grand Prix teams, which we'll reveal at the end of this program. But who is going to be the number 1 pick? Because this is obviously pressure for yourself, but you're also giving someone the accolade of being number 1. So they're going to be a bit cocky, I think, if you pick them. So you're going to be giving them their flowers, which you never get.
Yeah, I never get them, but one day...
So this could be personal. Someone who's wronged you might think, fuck them.
Well, I think there's a go-to person at the moment, but I don't think I'm going to pick them, and I think Krog's going to have that person.
The Comedy Brothers can't do it.
I don't think he is the go-to person this year. I think last year has really cost him, and I know he got the MVP, but... I think it's gone to his head. He's sitting now at number 4 on the list. There's some people in front of him. Yep. He's probably not good enough anymore. He's probably old out. He's lost his chance. And so I'm going to go for Adcock, the better of Tom.
Adcock. So number 2, he was in the draft order. Adcock is going to secure you a little-known title called Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
That is annoying.
Due out earlier this year. February 29th, so unlikely to be delayed. I think the original got an 88, the original remake part of this trilogy they're doing. But yeah, Adcock's landed you that. So initial thoughts to that paper, because I assume that was on your list somewhere, but I can never make these assumptions because who knows.
Yeah, it's in the top 10, and I think with Adcock, he's been around for a few years now. I think I've learned to trust in his picks, and actually he picks very similar to Adkins. And my assumption is if he may have had a similar game to Adkins, it'd be interesting to find out, and he might have stolen that away from him. So that's why I think he was quite good. And I'm quite happy with that. That's in my top 10, in my list, so it makes my list now. So it's great.
Yeah, I mean, that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was a pretty popular pick, so a lot of people have been stung by Adcock being earlier on in the draft, but he's landed that for you. Logan, you said annoying when that filtered out, so seems like that maybe have one that you had on your list anyway in the top of the upper echelon. Number 2, yeah.
I thought it could do better, to be honest. I think because it's a quiet year, I think that could be one of the 90 pluses potentially. So yeah, I think, as you say, everyone was going to have that pretty high up, I would have thought.
It's a big one. They could blow it. I mean, I saw the gameplay they showed, about half an hour of it, and it's fucking ridiculously big. And I thought, well, how are you going to tie this together? But we'll see. It's got that Final Fantasy
They usually do, though.
Yeah, they do.
They've got that pedigree, so everyone's higher for the last one as well. So look, I don't know. Maybe people are sick of it and they'll go, "Don't want this," but
no, they're not.
I find it hard to believe.
They're not. They're all over this now because the first one wasn't shit. They're like, this might be something good. Well, that's Adcock off the table for you, so you won't be having him. Who's going to be your main man then?
It's a good question because Biff hasn't failed me. He did me well last year, I think, if I remember rightly. And I'm kind of tempted by pick number 1, but I'm going to take Adkins.
Biff will be fuming at that.
I know he will be.
To be ousted by the full fucking draft order, he won't get over that. He finishes first for the first or second really, but gets number 1 in the draft order, and in the first round isn't even considered by either of you.
Look, I absolutely would have taken Biff over. I mean, to be fair, they probably had the same game, so does it really matter? But I think Adkins got cocky last year.
Yeah,
he should have transferred out that game and chucked something else in. But he had an unbelievably high scoring year. Like everything he picked was, other than that last thing, pretty much got him plus that sort of 82, 83 mark. So I think he could do it again. So get him in. Okay,
so Adkins has secured you Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth.
Yeah.
Which in old school terms would have been Yakuza 8, I think. They've changed it now to Like a Dragon. This is the turn-based version of that, carrying on Ichiban's adventure, which started with Like a Dragon Yakuza 7. Thoughts on that? I mean, it's on my list to get through these Yakuza games, but now I've got 8 of them, so I'm going to be decades away from that. But for you personally, did you see this lurking on any lists?
Yeah, this is in the top percentile on my list as well. So, yeah, I think that's a pretty solid pick.
Very nice. Paper reaction. Adkins off the table, and so is Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth.
I think I picked well, is all I'm going to say in that first round of picking people. Like, it's in the bottom. I've picked 30 games on my list, and it's in between 20 and 30 on mine. So it looks like one of those ones that could just be like a bit meh. Like, and I think, with this, especially in the top picks, you need more than meh.
Well, he's not happy with that.
To me.
No. Guess we'll see. I think I'll try and look up what the last one got as we chat, but I don't think it was terribly.
I think it was like maybe low 80s. The last one where I was looking, I don't know, I could be wrong on that, but it just didn't stand out. Like it was on loads of those top 10 lists, and it was like I was looking for it, and I was like, it's going to be lazy. People are going to put this on their top 10 list, but it just didn't look like it was one of those ones that's maybe more AAA than. Scoring higher, and sometimes you need to play the game and go for the scoring higher, not the AAA.
Cool, 86.
Wow, it's taking out of his arse then, isn't he?
I was like, I don't know where he's got this from. Because they usually score. I've said before on this, you need 85 average realistically. So if you get games that are hovering around that mark, then it'll do the job. It looks like to me it's a mid 80s game. But I think sometimes in the year when there's not a lot else going on, people bump it up a bit. So we'll have to see. Who knows?
Well, you've got the record now, Logan, of this championship, 859, which is obviously just over an average of 85. In fact, of those 10 games, and you had a £5 Good. I wish I charged people £5 for a fucking transfer. I'd be rich, especially with Hall throwing away money left, right, and centre. But do you think it's possible to breach that 859 this year?
No.
No.
No. It's going to be a really tricky year to get a team of averaging 85. I think it'll probably be. I think it's going to be like an 820 is the target or something like that. I'd say maybe even shorter than that. More
transfers is my prediction, but what the hell do I know? Anyway, Paper, we come back to you. Who are you going to bless with your second pick? This is where it gets a little bit more interesting because there's less cards on the table for you to be meddling with.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I'm going to give Krog the person he wanted, and I'm going to go for Salmon Man. So I feel like this is now his third year coming in.
Yep.
And I think, the first year is a real disaster for him. Last year, it was. The first year was a disaster for him. He didn't know the rules. He didn't understand it. Second year, last year, he seemed to really up his game. He started to get into it, and he's more on it. I think this year is going to be potentially his year. He also was third, I think, in the draft pick, so he should have a reasonable game. So for me, I think there's probably a bit more of a head on him than Biff, and so that's why
he's just going to be devastated by this entire process that he can't do anymore, can he? And he's still being hung out to dry. I wonder whether both of you will just play into the fact and just pick him last now, just to really get up his goat.
Tempting. Yeah. It's so tempting. So sabotage the whole thing just to get a bit.
Anyway, Paper, Salmon has given you Tekken 8, which I think is a pretty strong pick, coming early on this year. In fact, it'll be January 26th, so that'll be scored and out. Given that Mortal Kombat 1 and Street Fighter 6 came out in 2023, both scored. Street Fighter 6 scored astoundingly well. I think it was a 92. Mortal Kombat 1 was in the mid to low 80s, but Tekken 8 probably on course to do very well as well. I think there's a bit of not a resurgence of fighting games, but when these big three come around, they seem to get a lot of fanfare, and the results so far have been positive for the other two. So thoughts on what Salmon's giving you there on Tekken 8?
Yeah, what I wanted is in my top 10 again. So I want those top 10 games on my list. So I think it's a good pick, as you said. It's a good year for fighting games are doing well. The only worry sometimes with fighting games, or when there's lots of things coming out at once, they will get compared to the better one, and so that can sometimes cost them. Hopefully it won't, and it's a nice sort of mid-80s sort of pick.
Yeah, I think the good thing about Tekken 8 now is it's quite far removed from Street Fighter 6, and that was the one that kind of dominated last year in terms of the scores. So I think that it's enough time people who like Tekken are going to go back, and those that are a bit more casual will be like, oh, time to try something new, and Tekken 8 might be what they've got waiting for them. Logan, you've lost the choice of Salmon. You've also lost Tekken 8 being your team. Thoughts on that bitter blow, potentially?
Yeah, I'm kind of fine with it. I mean, I did look at Tekken 8, and I was actually surprised at how low, or comparatively low, Tekken 7 scored. It was an 82.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know whether that was because it was released. I think there was a year when they all come out together or something like that, but it didn't do too well, which surprised me. So I was put off a little bit by Tekken 8, but it feels like minimum low 80s, and it might, as you say, go up a little bit further, but not too devastated by that game, to be honest.
And what about Salmon being taken off the table?
Well,
because you try and wind him up in that group, so I don't know if that's probably done you a favour not having to deal with that in the.
I don't know. I don't know if I try and wind him up necessarily, but look, he's probably the best in terms of like PC gaming knowledge and tapping into that kind of side of things. So yeah, I think what Paper says is fair. I think it took him a little while to get to grips with it. It felt like he had a stronger year last year and picked some games that did relatively well that I had no idea about. So that could be a bit of a boon for Paper.
Absolutely. Well, stick with you, Logan. Who are you going to pick as your second man on the team?
Yeah, we'll have Biff. As much as I want to...
Taken in the stray.
I'll take him in. Put him under my wing.
Poor old Biff. He's never going to live this down, I don't think. Let's have a look. So, Biff. You actually cost Biff, because first on his list was The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered.
Yeah.
So by picking that, you stung him down to lower games. But at this initial stage, Biff has given you Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown.
Oh, this is what I feared he might do.
Why
is he doing that?
It's due out early. It's only a few weeks away.
Oh, there's not even a chance to get rid of it.
No, there's not. That is the bad thing if you don't want the game, if that happens.
I mean, look, where did I put this? 21st.
15th of January, so absolutely no chance. Even if a delay comes, it's unlikely.
We'll have to see. I mean, this is the one that's been chuffed out and chucked back a load of times, I think, isn't it? So,
well, this is the 2D version. That remake's dead and buried almost. It might come back.
Is it not that one?
But this is the new one they showed last year. And then people said, well, don't want that. It's one of those ones. What are you doing? We want the remake. And they were like, well, we've got this. And they went, no. I think it had a better showing later on in the year. I feel like you may be surprised at this one, but I don't think it's going to be. It's not going to be I don't think it'll be a disaster, but it's Ubisoft, so you don't really know what they're going to pull out of their arse, really.
If I get an 80 out of this, I'll be happy.
Yeah,
that's where I'll be with this. It's not. Yeah,
avoid it.
This is why I was like, I know that he's bang on Prince of Persia.
Yeah,
and I feared that he'd put this one higher up his list. There was this and. Like things like Star Wars, where I was like, he's just going to chuff them all the way up because he wants to play them, and that's the way it's happened. So, I've handed the reins over to Paper already. Unbelievable. I've stuck behind Biff, and he's done that to me. I don't believe it. Who knows? Look, if he gets me a good score, low 80s, then I'll sort of tip my hat to him a bit. But it doesn't look like it's by any means a banker to me.
Paper response to Prince of Persia being taken off the table for you. You won't be getting that, but was it?
It's 26th on my list out of 30 games. That gives you an idea of where I put it. And Biff, what they say is a broken clock is right twice a day, and that twice a day was last season for him. And this is common practice for him. Just pick the big games at the early start of the year, and every now and then it'll get it right. But he's just proven again that that is his tactic. And
he's always, to be fair to him, he's always in and around it. He's always in and around it. But
if you look at he's around it based on overall games and everyone else chuffing. He's not around it because he's had amazing picks at the top 2 games, is he?
He needs a better second pick. he needs a better second game for me. He does get a second game for me, doesn't he? I get 2 games.
Yeah, you get 2 games.
Yeah.
He can serve you up any manner of shit at this stage. But
we are unfortunately in the doldrums a little bit now. There's one. Maybe 2, maybe 3 games, I think, that I've probably got where I'm like there.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting because I remember last year, Final Fantasy 16 didn't get picked up until we got to your personal picks at the end. And I was like, how's that got through the fucking...
Yeah, how did that filter through?
How's that slip past Andre again? He's letting things just fly past him from crosses. You have to ask what's going on there, but there we go. Paper, you actually get to do some very powerful things. Being the first team member pick, you get to choose who's going to be the first pick, which is the ultimate glory for Adcock. He'll be happy with that. But you also get to condemn someone to being last pick. And that's what you're left with here, because whoever you choose will be saved of that embarrassment. The person you hang out in the cold will forever be known as the person who was picked last in the 2024 Fantasy Gaming League draft. So this is it. You're wielding a lot of power here, and there could be a lot of personal relationships at stake.
I've just had a real feeling of deja vu, by the way,
right?
And I'm going to repeat that deja vu. But before we get there, just to note that in the way people have been picked, that's the order of I had people in my list. So these are the bottom 2 people in my list of picks. So just to throw extra fuel on the fire.
On him.
But I remember when the season that Parky won the Grand Prix, he came up. I'm pretty sure he was last pick that year. Because I remember condemning him to that fate, mainly because we didn't really know what he was like and stuff like that. And anyway, he won it and he came up and then he beat me. So I'm going to repeat history and give Parky that final spot again and pick Hall.
Oh! I'd already put fucking Parky in your team. So Hall has been Hall's going to be happy with that. You've just given that egotistical bastard a reprieve there. You could have really sunk him by picking him last, but you've chosen not to.
He needed it. He needed a kick from last year.
He needs a few more kicks, I think.
He did need a kick from last year. But anyway, Hall's in the team. Hall is going to give you Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door remake. So I think they'll do okay.
Paper for paper, eh?
Yeah, thoughts on that? You don't sound overly excited by that prospect.
It's sort of lower mid-table for me. I think, like, if you look at the last Mario, I don't think it even score. It might have scored high 70s or really low 80s. I can't remember. I remember looking at the last Paper Mario because I thought, oh, this is a good pick, Mario. But this is the last one didn't do too.
And this is a remaster.
And so, well, yeah, but that might be quite good. But it's
it needs it. That's the saving grace, I think. I mean, the original, which came out in 2004, scored an 87 on Metacritic. We have to go back to Metacritic to get it. So it's whether that still stands up today. And we had the Super Mario RPG, which had a similar kind of been like decades since it'd been released. It didn't do too terribly, but didn't get the. I mean, Hall was telling me it was going to get a 92 at one point and save Parky's FGL Championship, and it never come to fruition. But it could go either way. I think it's the bones are there. It's whether today, when someone picks it up in 2023, goes, well, that feels like dog shit, or plays like dog shit, or it's one of those older ones. It's not going to get much treatment other than the graphical uptick. But
yeah, I think if in my mind, if it can get 80 to mid 80, I think it's all right. I think that's sort of where I see it in my head. It has the ability to drop into the 70s, which is the bit that worries me a little bit on it. There are probably better Nintendo games coming out this year that haven't been picked up yet that I will think will score higher than that. That are like Nintendo only.
Nintendo are normally a safe pair of hands. That's what I will. Super Mario RPG got 84, so I think if you were to trade that in, that wouldn't be too terrible. That'd be pretty good actually. So, you know, I would compare it closer to that if I was looking at it. But we will see. Logan, you've lost Hall, your brother in arms. You've also lost Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Talk to me.
Yeah, to be honest, I was kind of comfortable with any outcome. I figured Hall would go heavier on Nintendo, and I have to be honest, it looks like a quieter year, at least at the moment, from Nintendo. There's nothing sort of barnstorming that it looks like they're delivering. I mean, I'm not tapped into it, but I couldn't see
there'll be that
anything
new
was
Switch
like,
probably, so you'd think that with that there'll come something to transfer in, but they've kept their cards close to their chest.
Yeah, this is what I mean. There's not a lot out there where they're sort of advertising it, so you wonder whether is this a quiet year or whether that console will drop. But I was kind of okay. I think, you know, Parky usually is relatively solid. I just hope that, to be honest, he hasn't started Destiny 2, the final shape up there. That's my one concern. I have to be honest. So I look forward to imminently now getting Parky in Destiny 2, the final shape.
Well, let's move on to Parky. He's now the last pick, the poor bloke. Nicest bloke in the world, and you two have really just taken a big old shite on him, which is not going to be forgotten.
I'm happy to have him. It's a welcome place, this team.
He has secured you Hades 2. Now,
okay.
The only thing I'll say about this is that it ain't out yet. And it's supposed to go into early access before it comes out. So it could be one of those situations where it does get a score at some point. We've got a Q2 2024 launch window announced for it, but it's going to go to early access first. And the original was in early access for over a year. So it might be one of those ones that come Q4, it might have to be got rid of. But should it come out, I think you're into a 90s there. So thoughts on that? I mean, it might be transfer fodder, unfortunately, but you'll have to just play that one by ear, I think.
I did look at that, and I decided not to take a risk with it and put it in my list at all. So
yeah, he's not happy with that.
Well, I used to be risk it for a biscuit, but the longer I've done this, the more I've realised you're better off being less speculative and playing for the mid-80 crowd. So look, I'll chat to Parky and see what his thoughts were, get the inside track and see where it goes throughout the year. But I mean, look, it's not Destiny 2, the final shape, so
no,
I'll take it.
But it could be later on. Anyway,
Yeah,
Paper,
good.
no Hades 2 for you. Was that anywhere on your list, or is it's not even?
Not even considered. I don't think I even came across it, to be honest, when I was doing my 1 hour worth of research to put this list together. So it's of all 3 websites I looked at. So it's it sounds like the one you said. If it comes out, it'd be great. It could come out and score early access, and then you might just get a score. Who knows?
But then they'll drop a fucking full release and it'll go down and it'll get scrubbed out. So this is the tricky thing with it.
Original Hades got a 94.
Yeah.
But that was after full retail. And just keep in mind that Baldur's Gate 3, when it dropped in early access, ended up on a 74.
Yeah.
So if you end up with that level of score, it could be one of those ones where you get the early access score this year. Yeah, go on.
No, sorry. Right. So once it scores in early access, am I
stuck? You got it. Got to keep it.
That's yours.
Hold on. Referee required, James.
Yeah.
So I can't transfer it out if it gets because
no. Unless they scrub the scores. I mean, they did nuke Baldur's Gate 3, but that was the score had been there for 2 years. Yeah, I mean, you could end up with Hades being in 2 teams essentially in 2024 and 2025. You get the early access score of 71. Paper gets it next year with a 96 and goes, well, I've taken the title at 1.0. So you've got to be careful about that. I will do indeed. Anyway, we revert back to Mr. Paper because we've got our second round of games that have come through. We go back to Adcock. So this was the number 1 pick. Adcock wants to secure you, it seems, these games early and have his job done with and put feet up. So he's decided to give you Persona 3 Reload, which is the remake of Persona 3. Something I'm very much looking forward to personally, and the Persona games generally, the mainline ones, score well. I will say this one I feel like they've got the most work to do to get it up to snuff, so it all depends on whether they've pulled it out of their arse. But initial thoughts on Persona 3 Reload landing in your team, and it'll be out, what is it, February the 2nd, I think. Yeah, February the 2nd, so you're stuck with it for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, so top 10 again on my list. I think Persona games, you generally, as you said, mainline scores really well, though some of the guff they put on the side of it can score quite low. That's always sometimes the worry with Persona, that, you know, sometimes it's you're either going to score really well or you're going to get a bit of a stinker. So, but yeah, Persona 3 Reload, as you said, mainline, I think it will do okay. Has one of those ones, if they polish it up well, you know, could be high 80s, maybe even tipping into the 90s. If they snuff it off a little bit less and people thought they could have done more, you could be tipping into the 70s. And so that's sort of like, it's a bit of a risky one, but I think it's one that's worth taking because you would expect it to be in and around the 80s somewhere. Yeah,
I mean, generally the people that review these are Persona fans, so I think it comes back to what you said during that little monologue, that if they feel like they've done enough and got it up to snuff, it'll do well. But if they feel they've shortchanged it slightly, it might get criticised. But the originals have scored like in the 80s and 89s on Metacritic, which is the old school measuring stick, so not a terrible output. Logan, Persona 3 Reload lurking anywhere on lists, or would you have liked to have it in your team?
Yeah, I had it quite high. I think it's going to be a good. I think it will be a good score. So I think that's a good pick for James. So
Paper, Adcock gave you Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Persona 3 Reload, gone full Japanese. Your first pick. How are you happy with your stallion producing those 2 games?
All I ask, well, I say I don't ask, but all I want is people to pick games that are in my sort of top 10 or there or thereabouts. And so
he's done that. I can't ask for any more. I think they're both reasonably mid to high 80 scoring games if they produce the worth. So yeah,
turning his nose up at it. Kim, he's like, well, they'll do
for me. Anyway, Logan, back to you. Adkins, you've been critical of this particular company, saying they can't produce the goods. When I was excited last year about Starfield,
I know which game this is already.
You went those Xbox. You went, Phil can't produce games.
Yeah.
He said, well, you'll be hanging your hat on this one because it's Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2 coming to a team near you.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that? Because you have been critical of anything Xbox put out, and I've been trying to be positive with them, but they have stuttered a fair bit. But Hellblade 2, could it finally be the one?
Well, it was pretty high up in my list. It's just always the concern, right? You go, well, the best they've chuffed out is high 80s. So, but in this year, and when you're doing this game, that's what you want. Consistent high 80s. So yeah, I'm reasonably happy with that.
Yep. The original got on 84, so no disgrace.
Yeah.
This looks like it's going to be expanded. And look, this is to be honest, it's going to get a boon because it's got that mental health stuff in it. That'll give it a couple of extra points it probably didn't deserve. So that'll
Get the lefts on board.
They'll love it. They'll lap this up, and you know, it all comes to me down to whether it's going to actually arrive this year. They said 2024, no window given, but Xbox have promised this.
Hardly been strict, have they? That's the problem.
Well, Phil keeps
chuffed out too.
a game every quarter, he said. So let's put that to the test. This should be one of them. Paper, no Hellblade 2 for you. Was that anywhere on a list that could have been?
Not even on my list. So I'm happy to let that.
I'm always curious to see this paper list because everything that's good that I can see so far has been in my top 10, and you've gone no bottom half, not even in my top 10. What the fuck have you got then that's better than these?
Well, I'm last to pick, aren't I? So I can tell you what.
I'll be curious. Yeah, there's one that I know you're going to pick that you're hanging your hat on, and it's a little indie one. I know you'll be right up its chuff.
Well, is it indie because it looks
Indeed, and you think, oh, that's an indie.
Yes.
Well, we'll see. All be revealed. We go back to Salmon on Paper's team. Now, we talk about risking it for a biscuit. This might be one of the all-timers. You've got Black Myth Wukong, which has looked astounding in trailers. However, when you look at the game developer, Game Science, and you go, what have they ever made? And the shoulders get shrugged. They haven't made nothing. This has been one of the first big games coming out of China, so there's a fair bit of pressure on it. It's looked very good. It's a Souls-like game based on what I can see and what others have interpreted, but I feel like these ones can always go either way. Anyway, you got Black Myth Wukong. Was it on a list near you, Paper?
It's the first time I feel like someone's let me down.
I love James's annoyed smirk. I miss that so much.
It's not on my top 30.
Well.
So I'll have to go away and have a look at it because I actually know nothing really about it. Though the way you're describing it, it's got the day before written all over it. But with these things, as long as you're not stupid, you got time to transfer. And there's the good
comes
thing
out on January the 28th.
The good thing is, though, I'm expecting there to be some decent bombs dropped during the middle of the year when they do some of the cons and stuff like that. So
already planning a transfer of it.
Yeah,
so we've got opportunity, and there's lots of things in my top 10 that still haven't been picked. So it's,
I will say the odd thing about this is that they announced the release date of it for August the 20th, 2024 at the Game Awards. I'm like, why is it so far out? That feels way too in advance. So I'll be very surprised if it hits
6
that.
6 months, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, you're gonna get time to get rid of that if you want to. There's a couple of transfer windows. But Logan, was Black Myth Wukong lurking anywhere? Have you seen it on your travels?
I mean, I saw it on my travels, but I'm kind of like, I like there to be some history behind the developer.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I went, nah. And I thought everyone's getting, well, they're tricky, these Souls-like games, because I feel like, you know, you had Lies of P, which was Souls-like.
81-ish, yeah, done all right.
Yeah, and I think people, unless it's like one of these sort of like proper like hardcore like Souls games, I think people are just a bit like, copycat, and just, I mean, look, they say crap on it, it's still got an 8 out of 10 average, which is no disgrace, but I sometimes feel like they struggle to pick up the top half of that sort of 80s, sort of early 90s. So
you really want the real McCoy, don't you, from Software?
Yeah, I think this is the trouble. Yeah, I think people like the real McCoy of it, and then other than that, they go,
take it or leave it. Well, let's stay with you, Logan. We go to Biff, and I think
he needs to redeem himself here.
Well, I'll be interested. I won't comment. I'll just mention the game. He's going to give you Rise of the Ronin, or the Ronin, I should say.
Yes.
Now, this is a PlayStation published game, so they're slapping names on it, which can give it an advantage. Koei Tecmo developers. I would closely compare this, if I had to Neo and Neo 2, which was a similar kind of setup where Sony didn't develop them with their in-house. They outsourced it but published it. And both of those games were like mid to high 80s back in the day. And this is a new IP, if you will. But I think it's going to be on that Souls-like sort of having a go at it again, but using like Ninja and Ronin in this case. So talk to me. Japan 1863 is the setting, so it could have an advantage there. People love a Japanese setting these days, but talk to me.
So this was a late entry on my list, a little bit kind of lower down. And it's just because I didn't really know it. It had that word in it, Souls-like, I think, when I looked at it, and I was a bit like, oh, I don't know, don't trust it. But it is Sony published, so it gives me a little bit more confidence. But we'll have to wait and see. I hope it's good. As you say, it's probably a sort of lower 80s game, hopefully. But yeah, I don't really know too much about it. It was one that I sort of chucked in late doors.
Wow.
I don't really know what to say. I'm okay with it. Have to see where we go. I don't think I even get to transfer it. So
no, it's early, isn't it? This year, it's due out. Where is it here? March 22nd. So that'll be the first transfer window. See how those previews are heating up. If they've got any. Well, they can't be trusted. Paper, was Rise of the Ronin anywhere where you were looking for games, or is there another one that's just fallen off the cliff face and not been considered?
No, it's sitting mid-table. It was one of those ones that looked interesting, as you said, PlayStation exclusive, which always get bumps. It's PlayStation exclusive seems to get that bump a bit like Nintendo, but because it was new IP and I hadn't looked too much into it, I just sort of kept it. It didn't put it too high, but as I said, it could be one of those. It's a reasonable pick. It could be one of those ones that's sort of a bit meh as well. So we'll see.
So I've just gone on the PlayStation Store page, and here's some. It says more games like Rise of the Ronin. It's got Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, so that's a From Software game, highly scored. Ghost of Tsushima, which was another PlayStation published game. Neo 2, and then what I'd call concerning, Assassin's Creed Valhalla's been chucked in there as a comparison, but everything else I think is pretty much on track to do well, the setting and whatnot, but it's all about execution, and Team Ninja. We'll see. We'll see if they can. I think the last game they got was what was it called? I can't remember what it's called now. It was that other game that went on Game Pass for a little while. Wulong, I think it was called, but that done.
Fallen Dynasties.
Yeah, that's it. And it was it was what it was, but yeah, you kind of got Rise of the Ronin there. I say versus Black Myth Wukong in a way. I think they're both going to be a Souls-like adventure. One from a Chinese developer and one from a Japanese developer with different settings, but that could be the face-off. Anyway,
a lot of China going on.
Well, there is. They're promising big things, but they've got to deliver, haven't they? Let's get in there. Where are we now? We've Logan or Paper. I've completely lost.
We're on to me and Hall, I think.
Yes, we are. Paper, Hall. You wanted the real McCoy, didn't you? That's what you were thinking of getting him.
He's going to give me Destiny, isn't he?
No, he's not going to give you Destiny, no. But he's going to give you Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, which is the DLC scheduled to come out in spring of 2024. So we've got some wannabes on the lists, up and down these lists, but you've got From Software delivering their next substantial bit of DLC. And it's going to be about 2 years after the original game come out, so I can only imagine it's not going to be small. This will be a big boy. So Elden Ring, one of the highest rated games of the past 5 years. You've got the DLC follow-up. Talk to me.
Yeah. Do you know what? This one, as pure as brushed me by, and I didn't even realise it was coming out. Maybe because I'm not an Elden Ring player, but I didn't really see it when I was looking through everything. I think this so far could be the best player pick. You know, out of all the player picks we've had, I honestly think Elden Ring was such a good game, well received. I think people are grasping for a reasonable expansion to it, DLC, and so as long as they do well, and it sounds like they haven't rushed it, I think once again this could be one of those 90s. If it gets an open critic page and scores, you know, it's one of those. So I think, you know, from Hall, I'm glad I put my faith in him over Parky.
Crapped on him. Yeah, I mean, generally they've done really great DLC. So usually mid to high 80s, if not, and this is based on a base game that got a 96 or a 95, so it's got a chance there to do really well, especially that late on in the draft pick and later on in the order. This could be a real boon. Logan, don't look too pleased that that's been taken off the table, but no real McCoy for you this year. Shadow of the Erd Tree goes to paper, and Hall may well have pulled a rabbit out of his arse.
Yeah, it's not something that I was aware of. So, yeah, it sounds like
Can he complain?
banker. Can he complain?
Parky now. This is the final team member pick for you, Logan. Metaphor, Refantasio. So these are the guys that made Persona.
Yes,
That's what I will say. It's a crafty one. But yeah, talk to me about that. I mean, we've got Persona 3 Reload coming earlier in the year, which is obviously a remake of that original game. This is a brand new IP from the team that have been doing Persona for decades now. Happy?
Yeah, I think it's a slightly more sci-fi take on that kind of like battle. What do you call it? Turn-based, and there's a little bit of like live action battle as well. I think it could be a high-scoring game. I don't really know enough about these games to say whether it looks like it's going to be one of those sort of new Persona high 80s, low 90s games. But again, when we talk about developers having a bit of pedigree, they've got it. So, yeah, hopefully it's something good.
The Persona crowd are very excited about this because it's a new take on it. As much as they love the Persona sort of high school or secondary school take on it, this is like you said, like a sci-fi fantasy setting which they have not broached before. So it'd be interesting to see how they tile those elements together. Paper, was Metaphor Refantasio lurking on a list near you?
No, it wasn't even on my list. You know, it shows you how many games I've missed out.
Told you, this list has to be queried. It really does need to be queried based on what I've heard so far.
I mean, there is no solid release date or release window. Sometimes some of these games you think, oh, is it going to arrive or not? I mean,
I definitely, by the way, tried to pick things that I knew were on that top of my 30 list that were definitely coming out.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
This was lower down because of that reason. I think it could be a good game, but I always hate it when they say TBC or late 2024. I'd rather have things that are pretty similar to what happened last year, where I had a load of games that actually come out, and then there was just a couple of stragglers like Homeworld 3, which was quite high up on James's list, do I have to say, and it probably is again this year. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, that's that. So it's a quick recap. Paper, you've got Microsoft Flight Simulator 24, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Tekken 8, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Remake, Persona 3 Reload, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree. And then Logan, you've got The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Prince of Persia The Lost Crown, Hades 2, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, Rise of the Ronin, and Metaphor Refantasio. We'll move straight into the personal picks. This is it. This is where you can make or break it. As we looked last year at the data, this is where Parky collapsed, basically. His team picks done him the job, and it's the personal picks that let him down and conceded that title to Logan. So we're back to you. You're sort of in control here, Logan. We go back to your efforts. This is the big pressure now. No one to blame but yourself for what comes out of your mouth here. So talk to me. What have we got for number 8 in your draft roster?
Kind of like looking at my list at the moment, like already debating what I want to pick, because I want to steal something off James just to upset his apple cart a little bit, because he's still got, by the sounds of it, a number of games. So I'm like trying to second guess what he's got on his list. But
GTA 6.
You can have it, mate. You can have it by all means. I am gonna pick my old faithful that has arguably never let me down. It is Football Manager 2025.
Gone in early on that.
Well, James put it in his list last year, and I thought he might try and steal it off me.
He might try and steal. That would be a personal vendetta if he did take that. So Football Manager 2025, it always seems to arrive on time, so no concerns there. On Netflix now as well. Maybe that'll cost them. But Paper, was that something that you were going to try and steal? Somewhere, because it is a light year. These sort of games come in handy.
I had it at 6th on my list. I would have, if it probably got down to the final game and Krog hadn't picked it, I would have probably just picked it then. Because like once again, we know it's a. This is the thing though, it goes against Krog's philosophy of 85 because it's usually low to mid 80s rather than. So maybe I've got into Krog's head already by picking that early. He's picked a game that's in the low 80s. So I think
84 last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it's had an 82 the last year before that, I think, or something like that. So it's not trustworthy.
Below par, he's saying.
But that's what I'm saying. Krog's philosophy is it has to be 85 or above. That's
average.
It's never there.
You need some filler in there to make sure.
You've blown it early doors, crikey.
Go on then, Paper. What's going to be your 8th game?
So my 8th game,
I've got quite a few to choose from, and that means I'm second guessing which I've got them in order. I'm probably not going to go in straight in order. I'm going to pick this one, Princess Peach Showtime.
So, talk to me about that. I mean, it's due out early this year. I've seen it on various lists. March 22nd is when it's likely to arrive, but talk me through the thinking of that one. Is it just this Nintendo bump you're looking for, and that Princess Peach is finally getting her own game?
I think
that'll go down well with a certain crowd.
I think it's a little bit that, but if you actually look at the gameplay, it's a bit more platformy. It's like all based on like stages, and they got different levels. She can transform into different sort of like characters, so do like detective or sword spin or stuff like cooking. So it's lots of like, it feels like lots of little mini games within an adventure, and that's right up the sort of Nintendo Mario sort of street. And so it sort of felt like I can't remember what the old game was, like Blocks or something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but it's it just feels like one of those ones I think could be a reasonable Nintendo. I don't think it's going to be a 90s Nintendo, but a good mid-80s Nintendo scoring game, just because it feels quite different from anything else that they've done at the moment in the style that they do quite well, which is like party type games but with an adventure.
Yep. Logan, Princess Peach Showtime, was that lurking on the list near you, or did your just misogynistic outlook thought, I'm not putting a game in there with a lead female, regardless whether it will score well?
No, it was middle of my list. It was I think I was having a little look through Nintendo's list, and I was like, this is one of a few games really that look like they're appealing. I don't feel like there's a guarantee. There's no Zelda. There's no big Mario release. There's no
that we know of.
That we know of. This is the point, though. Yep. So I'm a bit concerned about what Nintendo are chucking out at the moment, because I feel like. When you look at it and you go, they're holding back. Like, it feels like they're holding back. They're dribbling out games, but they don't look like they're top games, is what I would say. And this feels like one of those that I think it feels like it's an 80s somewhere, but it didn't feel like one of the better ones to me. But
not a must-have.
I don't know much about Nintendo.
No, fair enough. So Logan, we'll stay with you. What's going to be number 9 on your team?
There's one. Well, there's a number that I really want to sort of chuck in. There's one game that I'm intrigued by that I really want to put in, but could be a mistake. But I'm going to do it because for some reason it looks like it could be interesting. It's Tales of Kenzara Zao, which is an un-Logan pick, but it's going in.
Interesting. I only saw that on one list, and it made it into Parky's Grand Prix team. Actually, I might have seen it on Salmon's. That may well have been lurking there, but
it wouldn't surprise me if it was on his sort of list. But it looks, I don't know. I want to try and find one that's a bit of a potential. I wouldn't say gem, but something a bit sort of lesser unknown. And I quite like the look of it as something a little bit different for me. So we'll chuck that in.
Any awareness of this paper?
None. Not on the list.
Not on there. April 23rd, 2024 release date. So, it could be, it'd be early-ish. So time to get rid of it if not. But Tales of Kenzara Zao for Logan. Paper not even interested in debating that particular one. Number 9 for you then, Paper.
But if it starts getting a little bit hard, not hard. There's lots of games. That's the problem. Is there's too many games still left to pick from in my list, and so I'll start second guessing myself. But I'm going to trust that the 1 hour worth of research I did yesterday was going to be worth it. And I'm going to pick Mario vs Donkey Kong.
Yeah, that was a fairly popular one in the Grand Prix. And yeah, that's definitely one that people are after. February the 16th, it's going to be appearing. Talk us through that one. Another Nintendo game, so you're clearly backing them. Logan's calling them they're dribbling out shit, basically, and you're saying, well, I'll take the shit and get the Nintendo bump, thank you.
Well,
I think they're going to all be starved of their big title Nintendo, so some of the smaller games might get a bit more of a shout this year. But it's a remake, and once again, one you have to go back to Metacritic to have a look at. Scored an 81 there on like the Game Boy Advance or whatever it was. But you know, hopefully they look what they've done. They seem to have upped it quite a lot, and I think people are just looking forward to it. And I think it could just be one of those nice mid-80 games, that it's
just feels out there and people enjoy.
Steady pair of hands, they're saying, unlike Andre. That's what they're after. Logan, response to that, another, as you called it, a drip of shit from Nintendo coming out, and
I just don't feel like it's their best. I think that's what I feel like, and then because I feel like, well, I don't know, it's hard to say because you even when I say it's a drip of shit, it's still pretty good though. So
yeah.
Look, I feel like this year I'm going a little bit more left field. I feel like Paper definitely wants it, and he's going for those Nintendo bankers.
Let's see, Logan. The final pick, maybe just as important as your first pick. So, what are you going to round your team out with?
Really struggling here because there's a couple that I want to kind of chuck in. This is so tricky. There's a couple in here. I might go with
Skull and Bones. Go on.
It is on the list, James, somehow. Unbelievably.
Same release date as Mario versus Donkey Kong.
Suicide Squad's on here as well, so you got to query it. I think I'm going to do Alone in the Dark.
I mean, it's been delayed out from last year, which is fine. First of all, they said we just want to avoid all the mentalness that's going on late in the year. Then they delayed it again, but trying to reboot that extremely old survival horror franchise, coming off the backs of the likes of Resident Evil 4, Dead Space remake. There's a Silent Hill 2 remake in production, Alan Wake 2, which come out at the back end of 2023. It's coming out at a time where we've had a lot of good and great survival horror games. So
it could be good or it could be really bad for it.
It needs to be up to snuff, is what I'm saying. Otherwise, it'll be crapped on. Talk to us a little bit more about this decision. Because you don't like survival horror.
I don't know. But from what I know, it was well enjoyed back in the day. And if they reimagine it properly, then it could do well. It's just whether they do it properly and can they be trusted. And I don't know. As you say, it's not my typical genre of choice. But I thought I'd give it a go, to be honest.
Paper, Alone in the Dark. I mean, it's out early, 20th of March 2024. So was this considered as a little quick, let's get it banked, get a score in, and then just move on with our lives?
Wasn't on the list.
Cool.
It was.
To be fair, like Krog, I fucking hate horror.
So I just don't look into it. And I also think,
it's just one of those ones. There's been so many good horror games out, and once again, I didn't look at those. It just has to be up to snuff, and if it isn't, it gets compared to some of those good horror games, and that sort of takes points off, and it's not got any of those things going for it, like PlayStation exclusive, Nintendo, that gets it that little bump for no reason. It's I don't know what Krog's doing this year. I feel like he's gone off piece. Like this allows me to throw a lot more. It's crazy. Like I don't know what he's done. This is not the normal Krog. It's gone to his head. I don't know that title is and he's playing silly buggers.
The original came out in 1992, so it's been a long time. I mean, I'm excited for it, but I like, survival horror games. And, yes, Pieces Interactive are the developers, so pick the bones out of that when you get time to research those. But Alone in the Dark, coming 20th of March 2024. So it'll be there. It'll come up quick, Logan. You'll know soon enough whether it's been a worthwhile pick. And that rounds out your team. And that's Crufts.
Shit year, isn't it?
Well, it's a tricky one. Year. It is a tricky one. Trench war.
Already making
it is a trench war.
Excuses. Sometimes you need to get down and dirty, Krog.
I did say at the start of this year, I feel like you need to scrap around a little bit. And look, the simple fact is when I'm looking at this list, I've absolutely not gone in the order. So there's some things that, well, I've moved it around multiple times already. And I think, my top 3 felt like, or top 4, 5 felt like they were the good ones. And they've all gone. So then literally I've got 20 games of any order you like, really, other than Skull and Bones and Suicide Squad, which are 24 and 25. So it's a tricky one. I think James has definitely played it safe. Fair play to him. But I want to go something a little bit different. No, I mean, look, I think they'll definitely score in the low 80s at least. Those 2 Mario games. But yeah, there was something about Tales of Kenzara that I like the look of. That I thought critically might do well. And Alone in the Dark is really just a flip of a coin as to whether they can execute it. And I've gone on that older, if you like,
pull it out the
name, pedigree, but it won't have it. I'm almost certain.
Paper, final pick. Obviously, it seems like a lot of your games haven't been taken up, so you've got a free choice of all sorts to be picking here.
I was just looking at the top 17. I've only got 3 of Krog's games on my list, so I've done all right in terms of my order. And he got the number 1 with The Last of Us, and Football Manager was there, and it wasn't down to the Rise of Rohan, which was not sent at number 17 that it picked. So there's a few games that sat in front of it. I'll go through the ones that I'm not going to pick because I think because of Krog's crazy antics, it allows me to be a little bit more liberal with my final pick, which is nice. So if I wanted to be, if Krog had picked well, because he hasn't, I would have gone Formula 124 because it's a standard.
Okay.
It's one of those ones you're going to score well and stuff like that. But then you've also got games like Tomb Raider Remastered coming out this year, which looks interesting. You got Crone Sworn, you got Banishers, The Ghost of New Eden, Homeworld 3, which I'm not going to pick this year.
Cool.
South Park Snow Day. South Park games always do well. We've got a new Star Wars game. You could even, if you really, really wanted to risk it, you pick Fable 4. But I don't think that'll come out this year. It's maybe more of a GTA. But there's some good games there that haven't been picked, and that's not including.
James has been through VGC's most anticipated there and basically chuffed them all in.
Tomb Raider wouldn't have been there. Crone Sworn wouldn't have been there. Homeworld wouldn't have been there. So it's but there's loads of stuff that we haven't picked up on.
I can't believe you're not picking Homeworld 3 after giving me that last year. And the year it's actually going to come out. You're going, nah, don't want to risk that.
I could, and I think I would have if it wasn't for this one game that I was leaving to the last day. I thought this could be
I know what it is.
90-plus game,
think, yeah.
And it's. I don't think a lot of people are going to be talking about it.
Is it made by Obsidian, James?
I don't know who it's made by, actually. I don't ever tend to look at that level of detail when I'm looking at games. But I think this one will score well, and I think it's Braid Anniversary Edition.
Oh.
No, it's not.
It's a 93 scored Metacritic game 10 years ago. If they've done that port well, it will score that higher.
What's the name?
Braid
Anniversary Edition. Yeah, I mean that's quite a shrewd one because the original was one of those indie darlings from back in the day. You had Fez, you had Braid, and I think you had Super Meat Boy. There's even like the Netflix documentary that was like called Indie Game, which I think followed those 3 games. And the developer of Braid, Jonathan Blow, went on to do The Witness, which scored very highly. And yeah, this was back in the day. This was one of the kings of the indies in the early days of when indies weren't really a thing. So to see it come back with a fresh coat of paint is going to be exciting for a lot of people. So it's coming out early as well, April 30th. So you won't have to wait too long to get that. Logan, thoughts on that one? It seemed
don't know anything about it, so
caught out.
Can't add anything. Never heard of it. Never heard of the original. Didn't know there was a new one.
Yeah, and that's Crufts.
Good luck.
It's one of those ones that when I just was looking through some lists and I saw Anniversary Edition. I was like, I better go and have a look at that score, what it scored originally. And if it was like mid 80s or low 80s, I probably wouldn't have picked it. But because it was like a 93 on Metacritic, I was like, hey, all they've got to do is put a skin on this, and people will probably be quite happy. Over it. Yeah. So it should at the very least be a mid 80s game. You'd expect.
Yeah, I think because it's a 2D game, it's an indie game. It will be under less scrutiny for the mechanics feeling old, because actually the mechanics in the game are actually quite unique and still to this day haven't really been replicated. So refresh of this would be nice indeed. So the Braid Anniversary Edition caps off Paper's team. Let's go just do the full rundown of your team, Logan. Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, Prince of Persia The Lost Crown, Hades 2, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, Rise of the Ronin, Metaphor Refantasio, Football Manager 2025, Tales of Kinzira Zhao, Alone in the Dark. Happy? Content? Scared? Frightened?
No, I mean, I think it's a difficult year. There's no two ways about it. I've got a couple of gamblers in there. But I feel like doing something a bit different this year. Look, I'll put my banker in, I'll put my safe one in, and then I'll have a little go with some other stuff and see what happens.
Roll the dice slightly. Paper, what's your thoughts on Logan's team now it's complete? Do you see that as much of a threat?
I don't know if threat's the right word. There's a lot of unknowns there for me that I don't really understand.
The whole fucking year is an unknown, James, to me. Honestly,
But
I looked at it and I was like, there's The Last of Us, and then there's Persona and Final Fantasy. And then beyond that, I was like, we've got yearly releases, we've got Call of Duties, we've got F1s, we've got FC. Like, I was like, what else do you do? And I was like, I'll steer away from that shit.
But this is what I mean. Every time you put out the game plan out there, mid 85s, you know what you got to do.
Yeah.
I feel like in the final 3 games, you've exploded and just gone crazy. You picked Football Manager early because you were scared I was going to pick it, and then you just went off the boil. I don't know what's gone on.
I'd say scared. It's about as close to a banker as I could get.
Absolutely scared that I was going to pick it, that you picked it first. Absolutely.
Just get in there. There's nothing else out there that I felt like was going to do better than that, so why not secure it?
Formula 1 24 probably would have done better than it.
I'm not picking that shit.
You absolutely capitulated at the end. It's crazy. I couldn't believe it when those games were being picked. Like, it's like, great. This makes my life easier.
That's it. We'll see.
It'll all come out in the wash, that's for sure. In 12 months' time or so. Paper, let's go for your team. Microsoft Flight Simulator 24, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Tekken 8, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, Persona 3 Reload, Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, Princess Peach Showtime, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, and Braid Anniversary Edition. Happy with all that when it's all said and done?
reasonable pick.
There was the Black Myth Wukong. I have no idea, and I'll have to go off and have a look at it and stuff like that. And it might be we just have to have a look at it because I don't know. And I think last time I've done this before, where I've gone, it was like to Parky, and it happened to be the top high scoring game of my team. So it's I won't shit over it just yet. But yeah, apart from that, everyone else picked on a similar vein to where my sort of list was going. So I think if it all goes wrong, I can't really look to anyone else but myself and blame. I'll have to just look and say, well, Krog was better on that given day, though by his final 3 picks, probably not.
Logan, looking at Paper's team, I mean, he wouldn't call yours a threat, but he roundly criticised the picks. What do you think of what he's put together?
I think there's a lot in the balance, is what I would say. I think I'd agree with James, there's a lot of unknowns in my list. Like, there's no two ways about that. But I think James's faith is based on Nintendo being Nintendo, and I'm not sure that Nintendo have chucked or put their best foot forward at this point. So, look, I think what has to be said is that there's work to be done for the rest of the year. And there's a couple of games of mine that are coming out relatively soon. So I'll be keenly looking to see what they're doing and also having an eye on what Nintendo are up to. But the one thing I do have to say is there is a plethora of other games that I won't mention that are looking pretty good, and there's options. So I think this year, I think you're right. I think this year is going to be a year of transfers. And using that to the max. But look, I think the fact that James hasn't seen Tales of Kanzara is interesting, because I'd have expected him to have come across that. And that one's got a good emotional story to tell with it, which usually resonates well. If Alone in the Dark hits them survival horror notes, I think there's a good game there. So look, I'm not unduly worried. I think things like Prince of Persia could cost me. There's things like that I'm more concerned about rather than necessarily my picks.
I think it's interesting. You say you think it's going to be the year of transfers. I think it's going to be the year of the team with the least transfers will win, because I
Well,
think
look, I always go on that
there's
basis.
I think there's everything's going to be sort of very evenly scored, and so you can if you make two or three transfers that you suddenly lost 15 points, and that's quite a lot in the grand scheme of things. That was the only reason I'm sat here today, is someone did three more transfers more than me. And
no, the reason you're sat here today is because Adkins chuffed it in the most unbelievable chuff I've ever seen a chuff happen. So that's the only reason you're sitting there. But you're there, and I think you keep your transfers to low, you're doing well. But what I mean by that is there's a lot of turt, and I think there's a lot of middling games which I think you'll have the opportunity later in the year to upgrade. That's my gut feel.
But then I always think if you're going to upgrade an 80, it's got to be more than 85.
Agreed. Yeah, it has. Yeah.
So it's not worth it.
He's not going to make any transfers, he said. So that's that. I mean, Paper, do you have any games you want to reveal that aren't on your list? 'Cause in case you do have transfer fodder there, I know some people keep stuff close to their chest, but is there anything... I know you went through your stuff just before your last few picks, but any other games that aren't on your list?
Revealed it all, didn't he? A mistake for the challenger.
Oh, no, I don't think there's any mistake. I think it's, I think there's more than enough games to go round to get mid picks this year, and I don't think there's, unless there's something that comes out in the middle of the year that thinks, well, we need to put that in our team ASAP. I don't think there's anything that Krog could transfer in that I couldn't find something else that's of a similar value. So I'm not too worried about the transfer in this year. So I'll show you my list afterwards. I'm not worried. Here's my cards.
Okay.
Logan, any games you want to reveal that you either thought about putting in and didn't, or... I'm not.
The one thing that I would say is that I really, really wanted to put Star Wars in. I think I'm surprised. No, the remaster.
Okay. Dark Forces.
You got the Dark Forces remaster, and you've got Outlaws, which are both there. To be honest, I expected them to be higher up. And I think the big one that I'm surprised that no one's got anywhere is Avowed. That's when I said Obsidian. I was like, I can't believe no one's touched it.
Scared off
by it, but I think this is what I mean. There are others out there as well. I was surprised Mario versus Donkey Kong and Princess Peach were quite low down, and then there's things like Lost Records, Bloom and Rage that I thought people would like. As you say, Banishers, Ghost of New Eden. There's a couple of what I'd say cool looking games out there that I'm sort of kind of surprised people haven't touched.
Yeah.
Biff games, I'd call them.
Well, I've sent you the Grand Prix teams in full in that group, so you can access those. We're going to quickly run through those and get some cold reactions of what's there. I've sent them in separate little pictures, essentially. I'll obviously read them out as well, and the audio guys can listen in. But Biff being the number one in the draft order, here's his full 10-game roster. You've got The Last of Us Part 2 remastered. You've got Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. You've got Rise of the Ronin. You've got Pacific Drive. You've got Suicide Squad. Kill the Justice League. We've got the Tomb Raider 1 through 3 remastered starring Lara Croft. You've got Open Road. You've got Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. We've got another Code Recollection. And then we've got, Jujutsu Kaisen Cursed Clash. Any high-level thoughts on that, Paper?
I just think there's just some real low-scoring games in that list. Like Warhammer's always very hit or miss, and when it misses, it really misses. Stuff like that. Suicide Squad, Prince of Persia. There's just some things in there that I probably wouldn't have touched. The Tomb Raider being that low down, I think was a reasonable pick, and I think a lot of people might have missed that. I think though that could go either way. I think
old crap, innit? Like really old crap. PS1 level to.
But I like the way that they've done it. That you can remaster and jump between the remaster and the old one.
It does look cool.
So you can just jump back and play what it looked like in PS1.
But it'll play like garbage still. That's what I'm getting at.
But you can lock the old fuck in the freezer again.
Yeah, that's true. That is the ultimate. Putting that.
All anyone ever did.
Put that old pervert in that freezer.
Go on the quad bike, and that was it.
Yeah. But Logan, any thoughts of Biff's team there? As a number one in the draft order, is that up to snuff? I mean, it's a tough year, as we know, but no,
it is a tough year. Well, it's really hard. It's always interesting, I find, to see how everyone ranks games, because when I have got my list here, and I haven't got Mario and Donkey Kong, Princess Peach, Metaphor, Prince of Persia, Rise of the Ronin. None of them are in my top 10. Like some of them aren't even my top 20. And you see people putting them in their, top 2, 3, 4 picks. It's just interesting to see. I mean, I don't want to be overly critical of things because it's a tough year. And I think it is easy to go to yearly releases in tough years. And one thing that I quite like actually about a lot of people's lists when I'm looking at them is that there's not a lot of like yearly release just filler. I mean, I think the only one in any of the lists really is Football Manager. And I kind of think fair play to people for having a go. I think that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. So Biff was actually the only person to get his first 2 picks that he had in his list. So his first 2 picks were The Last of Us Part 2 remaster and that Prince of Persia. Lost Crown.
I need to look at this Prince of Persia because it seems like a fucking mad choice to put that as your second pick.
That's what he wanted.
It seems mad.
He loves it. So a quick look at Adcock. We've got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Persona 3 Reload, Mario vs. Donkey Kong Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons remake, Star Wars Dark Forces remaster, Manor Lords, Still Wakes the Deep, The Plucky Squire, Rift of the Necrodancer, and then Braid Anniversary Edition. Paper thoughts on what Adcock can do. Will he finally fulfill his potential with that one?
I think that's a really strong team. Like it's like anything when you go into the Grand Prix. There's going to be a few games that maybe need to be subbed out, but things like Manor Lords is been getting a lot of hype on like the indie scene at the moment with on Steam and stuff like that. And it looks like people are quite excited for that, and it's also in early access, so people actually get to play and they get to feedback. So if that comes out, it will score relative well, and it's one of those ones that not a lot of people pick, and I expect Adcock to get that. So got Braid as well. As we saw, the one thing that's quite high up that I'm a bit like the Brother Two Towers Sun remake that didn't score too highly originally. So just the remake of it, and it doesn't feel like it's that old. So why are we remaking it? It's sort of a bit like that's the only one I'm a bit like. But apart from that, I think he's done quite well for himself. This could be his year.
Bit of data for Adcock's team. He had to go down to his 16th game to get his 10 games. That's the lowest of anyone. So everyone else had to go further down their list. So he's got the most out of that initial list of 25. He's not had to go as low as some of the others. With that in mind, Logan, can Pac-Man pull it out the bag, or is he condemned to another year in the doldrums?
Yeah, it looks like a reasonably strong list. I think if that Braid does well as well, it all the way down there, it could be good for him. But there's a couple on there that I'm not really aware of. So, but as you say, he's always got himself on the cusp in the last sort of year or so after sabotaging it a few years back. So, it could be a good one for him.
We've got Salmon, Tekken 8, Black Myth Wukong, Star Wars Outlaws, Avowed, Homeland 3, Life by You, Terminator, Dark Fate Defiance, Nightingale, World of Goo, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Paper. You said he didn't know what he was doing for the first few years. Has he finally got the hang of it now? Are you saying with that?
I think there's a few things in there that might need to be looked at. But,
we don't know how deep they went in their list to get some of these games.
He went to 18. No, 19, sorry.
World of Goo 2 being that high. Okay. But he's got Homeworld 3, that's a nice one. Star Wars Outlaw. This Black Myth Wukong is be interesting. I think I know nothing about it, so I don't want to comment on that. It could be one of those ones that, he surprises us and he gets a few good scores and it comes out. It's just, I guess we're joking because we don't know some of the stuff on there. But it's, there's some...
We're joking, James, so we're laughing because of the way that you've just directly not answered the question after bigging him up in the initial draw.
At the end of the day, I care about his top 2 picks, and even then, it's debatable. So,
any thoughts on Salmon, Logan? His chances for the Grand Prix? Has he scuppered himself?
Yeah, I mean, I think he needs a couple of games there to do well for him.
Needs to massage that at least eventually with some transfers.
It looks that way to me, but.
We'll find out, won't we? Adkins, he's got Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, Final Fantasy 14 Dawn Trail, Helldivers 2, Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, one of the Nintendo games not picked up in this main championship game, the remake of Luigi Mansion's Dark Moon, Alone in the Dark, South Park Snow Day, EA Sports FC 25, and Football Manager 2025. That is Adkins' list, and just for the data, he had to go the deepest in his list. He had to go all the way down to 29 to get a full 10-game
Is that
roster.
what area had Football Manager?
Yeah, that was down at 29.
It's
And the only games missing off it are Skull and Bones and Destiny 2 The Final Shape, so he nearly ended up with that dross. But
It surprises me how low people do put Football Manager down the list. We know it scores between 80, 85 every year, and it's like people just don't play the game for the game. They just get, you know.
well, I think they don't have to sacrifice a higher
You
game.
crapped on
you
it
did
a minute
crap
ago.
on it as
Where's
well.
the consistency?
Oh no, I think for the Grand Prix you're looking for an average of 80. For this game you need an 85. That's why you fucked it.
Yet you still put it at 6.
Yeah, fucked it. But I think Adkins. What I quite like about Adkins's games is like you go big on your top, but if you can get the low hanging fruit at the bottom, that's going to score you those 80s. Maybe EA Sports might not, but like Football Manager, South Park Snow Day, Alone in the Dark. These are good-ish games. You know, it's,
Crapped on it again a minute ago. Crapped on Alone in the Dark, and now you say it's a goodish game.
If you're going to get the
Consistency.
80s, the 80s, the 80 plus, you know.
What did I say, James, at the top of the thing? 820 is going to be roughly the score you need this year. So if you get 82s across the board, you're probably winning it.
I'll remember that when I get 85 across the board.
Good luck to you. I mean, it's doable. It's just harder than last year.
Logan, any thoughts on Adkins' team? He's got your Football Manager in there, and he's got EA Sports FC. So towards the back end, he was clearly struggling. Although not struggling enough to give Skull and Bones a look out, but still had to go very deep into his list. So he's not got as many uniques as some of the others in there.
Yeah, I mean, I had Like a Dragon, Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, Final Fantasy. I didn't have that Dawn Trail one.
They normally do pretty well, to be fair, those expansions. So it's pretty of a shrewd one. It's on his list and no one else's, so it's a very unique pick that he's got in there.
I think there's just a couple that I'd probably be looking at, which is Stalker 2. I think that's been lurking for a little while.
That's the Ukrainian dev, so there's a good news story to come out of that. So people will be looking to not crap on that if they can help it.
Yeah. Luigi's Mansion was a bit like, could be good. Again, could be middling.
It was like mid-70s, I think, Luigi's.
Yeah.
That's the only problem with it. It wasn't that
I think that's what put me off. I was like, it weren't great to start off with, and then you're giving it a remaster. You wonder if
paint, all that's required.
Yeah, was that it? So yeah, I mean, I think there's some good games on there. He's got some bankers in EA Sports and FM. I mean, it feels like that's the strongest we've seen so far.
Ooh, interesting.
All things given.
Let's move on to Hall. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, the remake, Elden Ring: Shadow of the Erdtree, Dragon's Dogma 2, 33 Immortals, Princess Peach Showtime, Little Nightmares 3, The Wolf Among Us 2, Visions of Mana, Destiny 2, The Final Shape, and he's unfortunately got himself a blank. So
Struggling Hall these days, isn't he?
If you're going to provide the bare minimum after 25 games, at least show they've given effort. Because some people were chucking 12 out there some years. And I was like, you're not even trying. So 25 minimum. He done the bare minimum, and he's been scuppered by that running out of games. So that might be a bit of a lesson to him. Particularly when you're lower down the order, you need to provide a bit more. But thoughts on that paper? He's hamstrung by that blank, but it's not terminal because it'd just be a mandatory transfer essentially. But
these some reasonable games on there, the Dragon's Dogma 2, the Princess Peach, the Little Nightmares, which didn't come up. The Wolf Among Us 2 could be an either way, could be a reasonable draft pick that low down, who knows. Destiny 2, we always give it stick, but was it Lightfall a few years ago got reasonable scores?
Witch Queen, they go good one shit one, so we're due a good one now.
Good one, exactly.
This is the last one as well.
Yeah.
So
exactly, so they got to put it out of the bag. The thing that annoys me when I see blanks and then I see no one's picked things like Formula 1, like just throw it on the bottom of your list.
Right,
it's not hard. It's just like we know it comes out every year. We know it scores.
That's what Adkins has done,
mid 80s. Just throw it at the bottom, like do what you want, and then if you get that far down, at least you're going to get an 80ish score in game on your list, and then you don't have to transfer it out and lose 5 points. Do they lose 5 points for having to transfer a blank in?
Yep, you don't get a free pass
unless you pick it up from the free market, isn't it?
Well, actually, I need to look at what I wrote down last time. I think actually you get penalised, whatever. It's just an automatic -5 because it's a sin to not have the 10 games.
It's a punishment.
You don't be getting away with that nonsense. But there's Hall's little group there. Any thoughts on Hall then, Logan? Seems like the blank might be the headline, but that can be easily overcome if you just pick a nice little high 80s game.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some games that I had like Dragon's Dogma 2. I think, yeah, I mean, it's got potential. If he gets a good sub in, Wolf Among Us 2 does well, Little Nightmares 3 comes out, all those sort of things, then I mean, he could pull it back, but it's always just a blow. It does look like a blow when you blank,
Yeah.
but it is possible to make a comeback from that.
Parky's number 6, down in the doldrums, struggling, and here's what he's produced. Hades 2, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. So you would have had that had Paper not picked it on his team, Logan. So instead you got Metaphor ReFantasio, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, Lost Records Bloom and Rage, Replaced, which looked fucking awesome 2 years ago and has been gone, so that's been forgotten about people, absolutely. Tales of Kinzira Zhao, Shadow of the Ninja Reborn, Zenless Zone Zero, and then Splatoon 3 Expansion Pass, Side Order. Paper, you've been down in that number 6 position before. You know how tough it is just to cobble anything together. How has Parky done in your eyes there?
I think like having Microsoft Flight Simulator is a bit of a steal, to be honest. I think that's a really good pick, and it makes me feel so much nicer. I stole it off Loading as well. If I hadn't have picked that, he would have got it, and I think it's going to score really well. There's a lot of games that I don't really know too much about, so it feels hard. So it feels like it could go one way or the other. It is hard being down there, but once again, like I think sometimes if you're that low, then sometimes it's better to flip the games around and get the football managers near the top of the grid and like the what we said, Formula Ones and stuff like that, because then you're going to get sort of that 80ish style game early on and stuff like that. But I think he's done, apart from Microsoft Flight Simulator, I don't really know too much about everything else.
No, fair enough. Logan, that's Parky's effort. He actually submitted the most games, 40 in total, so he didn't want to have the blank. He done what was needed to do, and to be honest, he's been rewarded quite handsomely in some cases. Obviously, a few wild cases there, but that's what you get when you're 6th in the running order and when you've been demoted down and lost the championship game. It's a brutal start to the Grand Prix once you've been kicked out of this ivory tower that you're now sitting in.
Yeah, I think the top sort of like 6 or 7 are reasonable. I don't know about that Metal Gear Solid one. It looked like something I didn't really want to touch, to be honest. I think that's an old tutor in it.
Yeah, it's been remade.
Yeah.
So it's like,
can it be trusted?
Konami can't be trusted, and it's as simple as that. Can he be trusted?
But I think Hades 2, if it comes out, as you say, Flight Sim, Metaphor ReFantasio could be good. Lots of records look good. Replaced, as you say, I like Tales of Kinzira. So there's some pretty reasonable picks on there. Again, I really do feel like this year you look at a list and you go, that game could be good or bad.
Yeah.
There's a lot out there, I think, where it sort of hangs in the balance. And I think it's the same for everyone. I think everyone's in a similar boat where there's some games out there where it goes, well, flip a coin to a certain extent.
It is the trench war. It's going to be really difficult. Paper, I'm going to put you on the spot. Out of these 6 Grand Prix teams that you've seen and had a little chat about, who is going to be the winner based on what you've got here?
For me, I'd be putting my money on Adcock at this moment in time. I just think there's a relatively strong lineup. Like with his top half of the Tato picks, just feel like solid picks that are going to score well. His bottom half, he's gone for some more indie darlings, should we say, and like get Braid Anniversary at number 10. In my thing, was a real steal, and like it just shows, sometimes having that little bit of knowledge in that indie space, you could pull a few big ones or big scoring ones near the back end of your draw. So I think Adcock for me has got it.
Logan, who are you going to put your money on?
Yeah, I think Adcock's got a strong list, but I think Adkins looks like a set of averaging mid-80s in there. I think he's got some really strong, what feel like some strong picks.
Interesting. They're both back in their first team picks each.
Yeah,
There's some bias coming in here.
Well, I wouldn't say it's bias. I think Like a Dragon, Snewers, like Hellblade 2, Final Fantasy, Helldivers 2, Luigi's Mansion, South Park, Football Manager. Like, I think there's some good, strong mid-80s games there. Luigi's Mansion could do really well. Alone in the Dark, if done well, could do really well. So I think there's a lot of potential there. I think EA Sports will be a mid-70s, high 70s, 80s top game. So that's probably going to drag him down a bit. But overall, it looks like a pretty strong list. I think there's some in Adcock's list that I just don't know about. I And I like Parky's. I think if some of his bottom three could do well, then I think he's in a good spot. I don't like Biff's list, I have to say. I don't. And I think Salmon's needs some work.
Biff was number one in the draft, so you're saying it's a real waste of squandering that number one slot.
Well, look, if you've got Prince of Persia as number 2, and then you've got other things in there like Jujutsu Kaisen and other, like, I don't know. I don't know too much about them, but for first pick, it feels like a strange... It doesn't look like the list. I mean, it's not the list that I would have picked. Like, when I look at my top 10, and I look at what Biff's got there, I don't know. I mean, look, this is what I mean. It's really easy to criticise at this point, but I think there's a lot up in the air. So... yeah, we'll see. But I think Adkins, to me, looks like a list of games that I mostly recognise and I think would do slightly better. Yeah.
So that's what they think. And we're all going to play it out over the next 12 months or so as the season kicks off for the Fantasy Gaming League 2024. Paper, any final words before we depart and say goodbye?
No.
I'm looking forward to my flowers at the end of the year, and if we could get everyone on the call to thank me for being the goat of this game, I would be much appreciated. Sorry, Krog, but it's only going one way. It's home here.
Well, Logan, do you have any response to that as we close out this draft show?
No, I just think it's going to be a really interesting year. I think it's, as I say, there's a lot up in the air, and I will say, if James wins, fair play. What else can you say? I think it's going to be a tricky year, and
it's a 30-year rivalry. Where's the fucking venom?
Look, I'm placid in my old age.
I am not. I've got another 30 years to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, that'll be the FGL draft for 2024. We'll see you on the next episode. Nothing more for us to say other than thanks for your time and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.